How's it going? You guys excited? This hackathon has been like a long time in the making, and it's also the first hackathon of the year. So like we're pretty excited to do it, and we have a whole team of people helping us run this thing. So really, I know some of you. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys build tomorrow, or by tomorrow. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this because I think what I'm going to talk about is relatively simple, or I hope it'll be simple. So I just want to quickly walk through these things and then let you guys get hacking because we want to try to maximize the time that you guys have to build stuff. So I'll just overview. We'll look at some real samples, and then we're around, not only me, but a bunch of us around to actually work with you one-on-one if you want to look at this. So I'm gonna breeze through it. You don't have to pay attention to all the details. And then I do want to spend some time though on best practices. And these are best practices that we've gained over time. And I, in particular, happen to work with a lot of partners, and I get feedback on like what works and what doesn't. So hopefully that'll be useful to you guys. So this is the only slide on the overview because I think you guys most likely already know what Facebook login is, and you use it. Lots of people use it. These are all the reasons you want to use it. People know it. They've been using it. They're comfortable using it again. It's secure. We spend a lot of time optimizing it. And we're always improving it. So that's really the reasons. The main thing is it also helps bring users back to your app. So as Peter was saying, like a lot of apps people use one time and then that's it. And the convenience of just like being able to go back with a single button is very it reduces friction to bring users back to your app. So let me just jump in. So this is what it looks like. You will actually get a chance to see the real thing. So I'm just going to like quickly kick through this. You've seen it before. It's a pretty standard Facebook dialog. That's it. You go back to the app. That was desktop, and this is mobile. So you log in. This is actually the Facebook app for Windows Phone. It's launched, and standard stuff. You see all the same permissions you guys have most likely seen before, and then you're back in the app. Right? Really straightforward. So let's talk about, I want to give some real examples because this feature has been like long awaited in the Windows world, and we think it's going to add a lot, and it's pretty simple, and I want to walk through like some of the ways you would integrate it. So this is what happens. You're going to see this like a couple times. It's very, very simple. On desktop, you call the web authentication broker, and it does all of its stuff, and you get a response back, and it tells you like what HTTP code was returned and all that really, really simple stuff. Really what you need, all you need here to integrate this is this URL. And most of this stuff, like the stuff that's not in yellow, is just cut and paste. So in this case, you just need your app ID, some callback URL that brings you back to your app, and the permissions that you're requesting. And as I said, don't worry too much about all these. We'll walk through them with you. We have all night and a good part of tomorrow. And I think my slides are now a little bit out of order, but OK. So this is it. You call authenticate async, and you get a response back. The response looks something like this. The first part is the URL that brings you back to your app, and then the access token, which you guys may be familiar with. Actually, let me stop. How many people here have built a Facebook app before? Oh, that's cool. How many have an app in any of the app stores? Wow. How many have an app in the Windows or the Windows Phone store? Wow, we made this too easy. So you guys have seen this before, most likely. So you get a response back. You check for success or failure. Really easy stuff. Same thing with phone. Well, very similar with phone, except we follow the model that we use on iOS and Android, which is you launch a URL the same way you would launch any other URL on the OS. And instead of getting a response like directly back, we call whatever your navigated to method is on whatever platform you're running on. So similar kind of deal. Oops, sorry, I'm going backwards. So where am I? All right. So to go back to your app, to get redirected back to your app on Windows Phone, you you have to use a special URL scheme. It's msft-gwid, and the gwid is your product ID, which you get from the manifest, and you just take all the dashes out, and that will redirect you back to your app. So this is what it looks like to register it. You guys know how to do it. Visual Studio makes it really easy. So this is what it looks like. I apologize for the formatting. It is not wrapped correctly. So you have the URL, pass in, same thing. Client ID is the same thing as app ID. We use those interchangeably. Scope is the permissions you're asking for, and then the redirect URI. So ultimately, you get this onNavigated to method called, and this will get called whether on success or failure, right? So then you have to deal with it. So this is trivial. You probably shouldn't do this in your code, but it just tries to get the access token, and that's it. So we also have, the interesting thing is a lot of people ask for just being able to launch the mobile web. So you launch mobile IE and get auth from there and then return back to your app. And we support that as a fallback as part of this as well. So everything is exactly the same here. The URL is all the same. You're just launching it in a web browser and providing the same redirect URI. So this looks like this, same thing as the other place. It's, you should add authorize after it. There was a bug where we actually always had to have it. It may still be there, I'm not sure, so just to be safe, add it. And then after you get your access token, you can do everything, right? You can build your own native sharing experience. You could, messages, et cetera, et cetera. Everything else after that is just the Graph API. An even simpler way is to just use one of these SDKs. So we've integrated into Parse. It actually just went live like 4 p.m. this afternoon. So if you use Parse, install the latest version. The SDK has it, and the docs are also updated with instructions. And Sanjeev is going to talk about this later, but there's also the outer curve C# SDK, and that's also this turns it into like 2 or 3 lines of code, and it just removes all the error-prone like cut and paste and copying long strings of digits and so on. So get that. All right, best practices. So this, for the hack, we don't evaluate this because it's just a hack. But this really makes a big difference in how successful your app really is. And oftentimes, people are perplexed about, they think they've built this really great app, and they're not getting the downloads they want, or they're not getting the engagement that they want. And somehow or the other, it has to generally do with one of these things. And there's a lot of other practices here. And I'm not going to enumerate them all, but I'm happy to discuss them all. We all are happy to discuss them all with you as we work with you tonight. So the first thing, people sometimes just put a login button there, and they just expect the user to log in. And a lot of times, users do. But it's a lot more effective to tell the users why you want to do it. Users are obviously very concerned about giving away their personal data, how it's going to be used, and so on. And they often don't know, like behind this screen, like what's going to be done with it. So people are a lot more trusting if you say, "Listen, I want your location because I'm going to tell you where your package is, in real time or whatever." And then when you add that value, it makes a huge, huge difference in terms of people who convert. And a lot of the things that I'm going to these best practices are going to be along these lines, which is tell the user why you're doing it and make it safe for them and make it like easy, like remove the friction from them. So the second thing, a lot of people ask for every permission under the sun. I've seen actually quite a few apps that do this. So imagine if you got this like permission dialog on the left. That's like I think that's every permission that we have. So we'll know everything about Peter. It's pretty scary, right? Like you're giving away everything. You're giving away like your address, your hometown, your birthday, your email address, like everything. And it's hard to imagine like which app is going to need like all these things, right? And it makes a huge difference when we measure this. This makes, I mean, I don't have the number like sometimes it doubles or triples or quadruples like the number of people that click through. The other thing is when you want to publish, when we look at people who use Facebook login and how they behave and what their concerns are, there's like a big distinction between reading and writing. Often users are perfectly fine giving you, you can read my data and whatever, but they're really, really scared of you posting something to their feed and like spamming their friends and all that. So in the latest iterations of login, the permission dialog has been broken down into separate read and write steps. And so one of the great things to do is, in the moment when the user's trying to do something, you ask them, like, can I do this? Right? That makes a huge, huge, huge difference in conversion, the number of people who will give you that permission, as opposed to just doing it up front where, like, I want to post to your feed. Why? No idea. It could be spamming. So another thing that users or apps sometimes try to do is, they want all this information, but they don't want to make it scary for users. So what they do is they break it down. So they ask you for the permission. Like, they'll ask you for like 2 read permissions the first time, and then like a couple later on, and so on. And this never works. This actually you can try because it's just going to fail instantly. Like, people just get really annoyed at this, and they give up using your app. So this is one that I actually got from working with lots of partners and lots of big partners. You should, like, it's useful to have a fallback, even though logging in and signing up with Facebook is like really convenient because it's just the click-through if you've already logged in. There's a sense of safety associated with having another option, right? And when an email is like universal, universal sign-up on the internet. So when you do this, it's an interesting thing happens. When we did this happens to be Spotify. But when we do this, it turns out that actually more people click through the Facebook login button because they feel safer doing it. And very few people, like, especially on a phone, it's hard, like there's a lot of typing to do to sign up. So there's that. And then the other thing is, this is surprising actually, but lots of apps don't handle when the user doesn't. So back here I had this cancel highlighted. Lots of apps actually don't handle that stuff correctly. And what happens, I've seen in multiple apps where it's not necessarily that the app is broken, but you end up on a blank page or something. And what the user was trying to do actually happened, but they just have no feedback, and then your app just seems broken. And so, I don't think it's a shock, like, yeah, do error checking, but it just happens to be a situation where I've seen this break a lot of apps for no reason. And especially if you're going to do you're going to ask for permissions in context, right? You might actually have like 2 or 3 places where you're asking, and you might forget or something like that, and then you end up in this broken state. So that's actually all I had. The easiest thing, what I wanted to do is we get to do something that we normally don't get to do if I was just giving a talk on this, which is we could actually work with you on this. So I wanted to keep this very light and simple, and so then we'll actually sit down with you guys and help you walk through it if you have any issues. So I'm going to bring up Sanjeev from Microsoft, who will go through the rest of the stage with me.